on?
Hello everybody and welcome back to episode 28 of the Resurrected, A Winner Is You podcast. As ever, my name is David and I'm sitting 7 nautical miles across from Mr. Alex Aldridge. How are you doing today, Alex?
Ahoy, hoy, Captain. What's a nautical mile?
I have absolutely no idea.
Well, let's have a look, shall we?
Quick trip to Google first thing.
Nautical mile, slightly longer than a mile on land, equaling 1.15 land measured or statute miles.
Wonder why they did that.
In sailors, isn't it? They think they're well good. Their miles are bigger. It's all about mile waving with them lot.
Massive miles.
Yeah.
Much bigger than our miles.
Oh yeah, 1.15 times our miles, mate.
So what have we been doing on the seas of, I don't know, I guess it's from around the coast of Africa for the most part?
Well, I mean, we, specifically, in this instance, are in Falmouth. Which, I will point out to you right now, is a bloody lovely place to visit.
I don't think I've ever been to Falmouth.
Well, I mean, I can't... we joke about this quite a lot, but genuinely can't think of anywhere in the UK you could go that's further away from where you live than Falmouth.
Oh, really? What is it?
Maybe Land's End.
Like Devon sort of area?
It's Cornwall, yeah.
Yeah, right, okay.
It's a 7-hour drive from where I live, so...
my goodness.
I can imagine it's going to be like 24 hours.
Oh my goodness. I can't believe there's a place in the UK that is that far away from me. Because my assumption is, like, where I am, I could pretty much drive anywhere I want in the UK within 24 hours. Probably. I could probably get there.
Yeah. Falmouth.
So Aberdeen to London...
Oh, apparently it's 11 and a half hours drive for you.
Okay. Because Aberdeen to London is a 10-hour train ride.
Yeah. Yeah, because I used to get about a 9-hour train ride because I didn't live quite as far south as that. So I'd end up, about 9 hours. Got through quite a lot of Sopranos. And of course, I think I've mentioned on here before already that one time when I decided to watch Jackass 3 on a train. And then obviously people would be looking.
The 3D one?
Yeah, maybe it wasn't that one then. It was whatever it is the one where they drink horse cum. And I was, publicly watching a man drink horse cum on a train with people kind of looking over my shoulder with their children around and all that. I thought, I'm not a good human being.
Speaking about drinking horse cum, I had to do my first ever COVID test over the last week.
First ever?
Yeah, I think so. And I cannot do them without absolutely gagging my guts up.
Well, you're like me then. You would be a very disappointing homosexual.
Yeah.
Because I can't do it either. My wife finds it hilarious that I'm just sitting there like tears streaming.
Yeah, as soon as it gets to the back of my throat,
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I'm going to die every time. And I come out looking like I've been violated, which I very much have.
It's a truly awful experience. It really is. It's harrowing. I came out with some sort of PTSD, I think.
There was a period where, Alex, if you're holding a microphone in your hand and you start moving that microphone around and carry on talking, it's going to sound fucking shit, innit? There was a period in time where I had to do these for work every 2 weeks, and I was doing them at work because then work would send them off to this. Well, it wasn't the NHS, let's put it that way. So there was me like heading off to the work toilets and just fucking like. So fuck knows what I thought I was doing at that stage of the career.
So yeah, COVID test not fun.
I doubt COVID's fun either, but we wouldn't know because
we've somehow managed to dodge that bullet so far.
I did think that to myself today. Actually, I'm quite surprised that I've not got it. Neither has Rach, neither of any of my family.
Oh yeah, see, it seems to be slowly making its way around my friends. So I feel like it's an inevitability. At some point, I'm going to catch the old big COVID. I was going to call it the big C, but that's something else.
Yes, it is. That is. Cholera.
Yeah.
But
chlamydia.
I think we're all okay. Yeah. Well, that's true, but that one's curable. I don't know if cholera is curable. I mean, it's
what is it? Oh, you maybe never got that far. What is it that Spoilers for Red Dead Redemption 2, people. Zoom forward 30 seconds.
Does he get syphilis? Or
What
something?
does Arthur Morgan die of? I think it's cholera.
Oh, it could be.
It's something
I
anyway.
definitely didn't get that far.
It's quite a bad like infection that even by today's standards is curable, but it takes like heavy antibiotics to fix it.
Oh, right.
Maybe cholera.
Because
You don't want cholera, folks. In fact, I may say rolling the dice, you may be better getting COVID than cholera.
there's no question about that. Here's a question though. Like, when you're a kid, we still have to get vaccinated for a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, MMR is one. It's the measles, mumps, and rubella one. You get your BCG, which is that meningitis? Yeah, meningitis.
Yeah, maybe.
One.
Yeah,
I'm actually not sure what a BCG is now.
But I'm thinking more along the lines of like, when you get tuberculosis for a
tuberculosis. That's the one that Arthur Morgan dies of.
Oh, okay.
Someone coughs on his face right at the start of the game.
If we didn't get vaccinated for these, how are we going to get it? I mean,
well, they've done that. So like smallpox got eradicated from basically planet Earth through vaccination, didn't it?
Okay.
So basically,
tuberculosis hasn't.
Yeah, I guess.
Why are we still getting vaccinated for it?
I guess Western countries can't be bothered helping out poor people. I guess would be the probably the answer to that. Unfortunately.
I suppose that's kind of relevant to what we've played.
So,
really, isn't it?
well, do you know? Like, because this is probably is relevant to what we've been playing. Do you know what that guy dies of on the ship? That gets like.
He says it's not consumption, right? Which is an old timey word.
I actually googled this. What is it? Because where they would have caught that if it was consumption.
That is tuberculosis. There you go. He says it's not that because they said, we would have all caught it if that's what it was.
Because that was on, because I was Googling it and he also mentions a place. So I Googled the place and that's where they picked up the French people, I think. There would have been like a workhouse and they went and just picked up those folk to work on the ship, I guess.
Oh, okay. Who is it is it the Indian guys who die of it?
Yeah, I think so.
And it's just put down to being really cold, right? Like a really bad...
Yeah, which doesn't seem right to me.
No.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I wonder what they got.
I don't know if I told you about this, but I found a thing on Reddit recently where they were talking about, they had like a list of, I can't remember what year it was now, maybe that's 1653 or something. And basically what they were doing at that time was they were writing down basically what everybody had died of. They were making a record of what caused all the deaths in London in 1653 or something.
Okay.
And basically what it turns out is that if there wasn't so much like infant mortality in that time period, the life expectancy would be roughly what it is here now for us. Yeah. So basically the stats are skewered. Everybody kind of makes those jokes. You see it in like Family Guy and all that kind of shit, where if you lived in that time, you made it to like 40 and then snuffed it. But that's not really the case. It was either you made it to like 70 odd and died, or you died before you had teeth.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because they had all names for it. One of the names was teeth. Like the people who died, the number of people who died of cancer was like 10 out of...
Yeah, that was
tens and tens and thousands of people.
That was just like some sort of wasting illness, right? They called it.
They called it wolf.
Wolf.
Because it eats you from the inside.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I was fucking fascinated by this.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because
of all the kids, then they basically ripped the life expectancy down. But it wasn't like that. It was if you survived cot death and all the other shit that happened to kids at that age, you would probably live to be quite old.
So basically what you're saying is we can all drink and smoke and rub ourselves in dirt as much as we like. It makes no difference whatsoever. Do
you have any fucking what? Well, actually, this podcast should be morbid because that's what the entire game is.
Yeah, it's a very morbid game.
Do you have or have you had any relatives who were heavy smokers that actually ended up dying of lung cancer? Because I haven't. Almost all of my mum's side of the family were really heavy smokers, and not one of them got lung cancer
Not lung
or
cancer.
any kind of cancer.
I've had a granddad that died of stomach cancer who was an extremely heavy smoker. That's the closest.
Maybe that could do it. If he's really fucking taking it in, just been like proper, like down to the guts. But
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
yeah. Because my nan used to smoke like 60 a day, and she didn't die of that. So
I think a lot
maybe
of it's genetic,
maybe
right?
it's a lie.
You've either got that sort of gene or you don't, where you're going to be predisposed to getting it. And then if you've got the well, we don't know if we've got it or unless you get it. And then I guess like if you've got it, there's things you can do to minimize the chances of it happening. Would be my guess. I don't know.
Yeah, we're a heart disease family more than anything, I think, as far as I can tell.
I'm not sure what the males in my family either live forever or they die really young. Or I mean young as in like 60. And then the women all go mad. They all get dementia.
Oh, well, yeah, that happens to my family too. I remember like every time doctors used to ask, like, have you got any history of any X, Y, Z in your family? They'd always be like, any history of heart disease? And I would always completely blank that my dad's dad died of a heart attack. Because I don't know. I never met the guy. He died when my dad was 11. So like, my dad barely knew him. So I definitely didn't. So that's quite close to my lineage. Just only one person up from my dad.
Yeah.
Quite a young man. And I've never been like, no history of anything. So I've probably screwed myself out of some kind of heart checks from a lot of competent doctors along the line.
Yeah, your dad's still marching on though. Building what's he working on just now in terms of models?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. He keeps going to me, I need to finish off doing your Bloodhound? No, that's Apex Legends. I need to finish off doing your Bloodborne stuff from the expansion packs that we bought, but he hasn't done them. So I don't know. I think he's playing a lot of games. He plays games multiple times a week.
Oh, he's living the dream. He is.
Yeah,
like...
but I don't know what he's painting. That's a really good question. I should ask him. I should pay more attention to his life.
Well, you've got a lot going on, to be fair.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
You've got an Apex Battle Pass to finish.
Oh, exactly. I've got an Apex Battle Pass to finish while a child is sleeping on my legs.
Exactly, and made infinitely harder now because I noticed I had a quick game earlier today. I've noticed that my shotgun challenges are also not working. So it's any weapon related challenge is just not working now. Yeah.
So PSA,
thanks,
for any
Apex.
of our loyal listeners who are also Apex gamers, which should be all of you because the amount of times we talk about it, we are also getting screwed by the weapons not actually being tracked.
Have you looked? Because I tried to Google if it was a thing, and it seems to periodically be a thing, but I can't see much that's happened.
Don't you hate that? Like when you try and Google something that's happened to you right now, and then you only blog posted from like 2 years ago. You're like, well, yeah. This is annoying that clearly this was an issue years ago and it hasn't been sorted, but also annoying that it's only me and you who are getting it right now.
It seems to have, for me at least, I wonder if it has appeared roughly alongside the new event.
It has to be. It has to be, yeah.
Which gives you another reason to hate that event, Alex.
And hate Christmas, I guess, because it's Christmas based.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't hate Christmas, but some people weirdly do.
I could see a scenario in which someone wouldn't like Christmas. If you had no friends or family, it'd be pretty bad.
Or if you had too much friends and family and you're broke every year.
Oh my God, yeah. Getting crammed into that's one thing I've got. I'm going to my mum and dad's for Christmas this year, and obviously I'm looking forward to going to the house for Christmas, but there's a lot of us being crammed into quite a small room that I'm quite already dreading. I'm just going to find a corner with some space and just not move.
I was, Rach and I were invited to some like gathering at one of the NCT women's house with everybody from the NCT
zombies
course.
Do just gather in the car park.
she was like, oh, what do you think to that? And I was like, doesn't seem very safe, does it? She was like, oh, I thought you were just going to make an excuse that you just don't want to go. It sounds boring. I was like, no, they've got like more cases of COVID in the UK today than any other day in history. So probably don't want to go sit in a stranger's house with like 12 other strangers.
Yeah, I get that.
It's almost like we've just like, I don't know, swept it under the rug so much that my wife was just kind of like, are you actually thinking about COVID again? It's like, well, yeah, kind of have to now, yeah.
It's back, baby.
Boosters booked and all that. Get vaccinated if you're listening, and if you're an anti-vaxxer and listen to this podcast, fucking turn it off and piss off.
Or just
Don't want you in.
Yeah, just
Don't
get
want you in. Fuck
vaccinations,
off.
man. Just calm down. It's a little tidbit for you if you're an anti-vaxxer. The flu vaccine that people get every year changes every year. So if your idea is that it's not been investigated or tested enough, neither has the flu vaccine we've all been getting every year for decades. So,
I actually didn't know that. I'm going to keep that in the back pocket.
so basically, I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about it, and they weren't talking about anti-vaxxers specifically, but they were talking about developing the flu vaccine. And they usually, because Australia is just coming out of their flu season and we are going into ours, the sort of northern hemisphere or the western world, however it works, they use basically the southern hemisphere / Australia as like the guinea pigs, and to see the sort of flu strains that are on the go at the moment, and then develop their vaccine to try and combat the specific flu strains. Because obviously there's no one specific flu. It's just a complicated illness.
That's how you keep getting it. Otherwise, you'd never get it ever again.
Yeah, same. So I guess it's a similar reason why people keep getting the cold. You can't. There's no cold cure because it's just it's such a complicated.
Yeah,
bug.
exactly.
Yeah,
and I think one of the things I saw as well was like people who go on about like the long-term effects of the vaccine. Like there's no basis around there being issues with the long-term effects, because typically long-term effects have to be observed over a long period of time because vaccines are given out to a small sample size.
Yeah.
Whereas the COVID vaccines been given out to like 5 billion people. So that any long-term effects would have shown up somewhere quite a lot in those 5 billion people if they existed, because people would just get them straight away anyway.
Mm.
So because they haven't, that's kind of done the research for them.
Yeah, exactly.
What a serious conversation. Fucking hell.
We have
Look what this game's done to us.
Yeah, right. Well, I know you're leading this. You've got the notes for this podcast, Alex. But
I'm basically, the notes are all story based. So you tell me, you just go for it.
I
say what you want to say.
between. So I spoke to you about this privately, but I went between thinking this game is absolutely phenomenal and being deeply frustrated and thinking, am I actually stupid? So like it was both. It was one of these odd games. I feel like a lot of the games we play are, you either like it or we don't. We either enjoy it or we haven't. This one, I did enjoy it, and I think it was fantastic. But also there was moments in this game that I found deeply frustrating, deeply annoying, and just made me want to turn it off because I'm like, I cannot be bothered. And the worst thing I did is I stopped playing for 2 days when we were playing through it. And when I came back, I had absolutely no idea what was going on. I basically just had to start tugging it, and you just like picking strings and try to tug at them again and see where I got.
Yeah, and I had to basically just use a guide at one point as well, because I did the same as you. I got to a point where, because this game is so different to anything else we've played, and because the way that you achieve success in this game is through sort of critical or lateral thinking or process of elimination or observation, there's an element to not being bothered. Like, I can't be bothered to do that right now. Like, especially as I just had a kid, and then I wasn't working at the time. But if I've had like hardly any sleep, and I think, I've got to go back to that game I'm stuck on, and I'm not stuck on it because of any like thumb-based skills that I can overcome. I can sort of hammer my head against, a boss of the game or whatever. This is just like, I'm gonna have to go back and like think about it again, and I'm too tired and can't be fucked to go think about it again.
How did you?
And I think,
sorry, carry on.
Like the guesswork that is inherently needed in the game, I think, is what maybe not hampers it.
Yeah, there is definitely.
It's what made
guesswork,
it.
Yeah.
It's what made me less excited to go back, because knowing that there isn't like a definitive way for me to figure some of it out, and it's outright told me that, just thought to myself like, oh, I'm just gonna have to go and like guess at shit. Which is at one point where I started to just get the wiki out, and if I was really dead set on somebody being what they are or who they were, but I didn't have enough other people to then have it like, tick off the 3, I was just like, right, I'm going to put this guy's name in the wiki, and if it's right, then fine, I'm okay. And if it's wrong, fuck it. I need to get through this because I'm just at a wall with it.
Yeah, I found, so I don't know if you remember, but I sent you a video that was it a Polygon video? And it was
Yeah, I
basically,
think so.
it was like tips, spoiler-free tips on how to play. I actually found that video super helpful because when we first started playing, all I was doing was listening to the story and listening for names and trying to match up conversations.
Yeah.
Watching that video actually sort of put on a light bulb in my head that you can use environmental stuff to try and figure out who people are. And that I found that really... It was just like, oh my god, yeah, that's right. And then like there were sometimes when you got stuff, like I got the gunner in his in like the guy that deals with money, I forgot what he's called now.
The purser?
Yeah, that's right. And just like I think I found both of those in their workshop. Same with the woodworker guy. And I don't know how I got the two. I don't like because you get the carpenter and the carpenter's assistant. I basically just guessed at those. I don't know, or is there a way to figure out who is the actual carpenter or the assistant?
Well, you're gonna find out because I will be telling you everything you need to know.
The other sort of things I liked was trying to follow. It often didn't, annoyingly, because I enjoyed it so much, it often didn't result in me actually being able to plug a name in a hole. But I loved it when if you would find someone that was injured and crawling somewhere. There was at least 2 occasions I can think of where that happened, and sort of going to different stages of the memory unfolding to try and follow where that person was going. I thought was really fun. Really fun.
Definitely. I can't remember what it was that you told me, but there must have been something that you said where it was like, go back. It seems to me that one of the biggest, sort of most revealing scenes in the entire game is the bit where the guy's dying of the cold, and there's people sat outside, and some people are asleep, and some people are sitting at a table, and they're all speaking Russian and all that. And there was another bit as well where you told me like, oh, go look through one of the holes, and there's somebody in a room. And I think that opened it up for me in terms of like, I'm too busy staring at what's going on right here, and I need to get up and out and around and follow and just look at every single person in this room and try and figure out, and then go, like you say, go back and see like, well, where have you come from? Have you walked out of a door earlier on? Or have you been, I don't know, because there's one scene, I think, where so many people have stood together. And that was the light bulb moment for me in this game, was just looking at that picture of the Justice at Sea. And
that's right.
And just taking a punt on what they were based on what they were wearing. So all of a sudden I got like all the stewards, I decided to just go for.
That's how I got the stewards.
All the midshipmen are kind of wearing the same kind of stuff. And after I started to do that, then I'd narrowed it down enough for me to be able to be like, right, I'm going to focus on this guy and go find exactly which steward he is, rather than just being like, I don't know who any of them are, because I wasn't really paying attention to clothes or anything like that. I was just, like you say, waiting for someone to say a name.
You gave me an amazing clue that sort of helped, and now I can't remember if it helped or it made me deeply frustrated because I didn't click at the same time. But I remember you talking about when you know how you can sort of match up the numbers on the hammocks to the crew manifest. I did that, and I only got like 1, I think, out of it, and then I was like, well, that's it. I've got my 1. But then actually, it was you that said that you can go back and match boots and stuff up, and I was like, oh, because I was walking around all the hammocks and they just had their face covered, but their feet were hanging out. So I was like,
that guy with the tattoo, his arm was hanging out as well.
I missed all that. Annoyingly, I missed all that. I must have got it some other way.
I think there was something I was talking to you about as well, because I found some of the, like in some of the videos I watched, because there's so much guesswork that's has to be done. People have really tried to like clutch at ways to kind of figure it out, and some of them it's like, this person was upstairs on the deck and his bunk was open, and because he's this type of nationality and it's with these other nationalities, it has to be this guy because he's upstairs and his bunk's empty, kind of thing. Or another one was like, oh, if they die they take their bunks down, so if you get to a certain thing and you know somebody's dead, that's one with the 2 brothers. So apparently one of the brothers, the Peters brothers, the guy who dies right at the beginning, his bunk is then never there again, but his brother's one is always there until he dies. So you can always figure out which was the Peters brothers is the one that died, but that's if you've decided to go outside the box and be like, well, they've obviously taken his bunk down because he's dead. But I would have never have.
I never would have clicked that. No, not something I ever would have thought about.
But I mean, my notes, like I went to town on them. I've got basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the story in the order that it actually
I'm looking forward
happens.
to this because I think there's stuff I missed out on. Like they were like I think like there was a bit in the game that talked about a stowaway, and I could just never figure out how he was a stowaway at any point.
They don't tell you anything other than somebody was trying to stow away. They don't know who it was.
So was he in the box that fell on someone?
Yes.
So there was two people that died in that, did they? Was there someone under the box? And right, because it shows you two different occasions with someone dying, and I was like, these scenes are just the same. Like,
yeah, they are.
Right.
That wound me up as well because I was trying to find out the name of it, and yeah. Do you want me to just go? Do you want me to just get started?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, so yeah, what I'm going to do is, well, do you want to tell that? I mean, do you want to tell any listeners who are totally confused how you play the game, what the game is before?
Yeah, I guess so.
You go for it because I'm going to be talking a lot in a minute.
The rough sort of, you are an insurance man, I guess, and you are sent to the Obra Dinn by someone that becomes apparent, I guess, as the story goes on, to try and work out what had unfolded on this ship that had it appeared with everyone on board dead and people missing, I assume.
So it comes back to Falmouth as that's what a ghost ship is apparently, and that the name ghost ship means a ship that has nobody on it anymore.
Right. Okay.
It just floats along with nobody on it. That's literally what a ghost ship is supposed to be. Not one with actual ghosts on it.
You've been given, so you can feel free to correct me, but this is how I've picked it up: is you're an insurance guy, basically just investigating a claim of insurance for a boat, and you have been given this manifest, this book that you've got to try and fill out and figure out what happened on the ship, to then decide who is entitled to what, if any, compensation. So basically, your job as this person is to try and decipher the story on this ghost ship, apparently, by walking around the ship, and when you investigate a scene of a crime, it's not necessarily a crime, but of an incident where you find a dead body, for example, he has this sort of compass clock that you can pull out, and then it allows him to see a still of something of how this sort of scene played out, as well as a bit of
the moment of that person's death, I think.
Yes, as well as maybe the dialogue in the 30 seconds in the lead up to that.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, you've also got the crew manifest, you've got the layout of the ship, and you've got pictures
of drawings.
Drawings and drawings, and you basically got to use that information to piece the whole story together and find out what happened from when this Obra Dinn ship left Falmouth to when it went down the coast of Africa and met its fate. Basically, what happened to the crew. And I will say, like, as much as like I swung between finding this game absolutely fantastic and deeply frustrating, I think like my takeaway on this game is that it is a really, really special game, and
yes,
I think it is worth your time, even if it's I don't know, maybe like it's a game unlike anything we've ever played in this podcast, and it's a game unlike maybe anything I've ever played, and something that like I would be very much interested to see come along again, and what else the developers do, because I don't know if you've got it, but I did have a look up of the development house that made this game, and they've got quite a cool or interesting history. But
it's Lucas Pope is the guy who did most of it.
That's right,
if not all of it.
I think he's got I'm going to have to look this up, but I think he's got some sort of GameSpot Giant Bomb connection. Lucas Pope.
Okay, well the man is. It's tough to admit when somebody's outsmarted you, isn't it? So I think that's potentially where our frustration with the game lies, because the man is clearly very, very intelligent, and between this and Papers, Please has made two of the most unique games I've ever played. The one thing I will say, that sounds a bit cliche to really say it, but this game really does stick with you. It
does.
No matter how you feel while playing it, you'll be thinking about it for a long time afterwards. And it's stunning. It's like the dioramas that he creates of all these death scenes are just outstanding. even if the graphics are slightly crude. Which graphical style did you use, actually? I think I went with LCD in the end.
I went with the basic,
sort of whitish one.
whatever the start
Oh,
one
you
was.
stuck with Macintosh one.
Yeah, and then I did start messing with it at some point, but maybe this says something, maybe this because I'm an idiot, but once I had started playing the game, I found it difficult to then see the ship in the same way once I started changing with the filters, so I just had to go back to the old one. I did have a quick look, and he doesn't have a lot of games in his history, but the one that stuck out to me is this is the same guy that made Papers, Please. Yeah,
which is also worth your time, and it's fucking excellent.
Have you finished that?
Right. Yes, me and Rach did that together.
Right, I need to go back and finish that, because I just find I find it's too stressful, because there seems to be no way to like min-max that game.
No, there isn't. I think I must have had to look up a guide for that as well. Damn you, Pope! You smart bastard. Right.
So, sorry, before you go on as well, like for me personally, I know like everybody has their own taste, because I know this game was hugely popular, but this is like if you're talking about sort of intelligent, in quotation marks, video games, this is the type of video game that I enjoy as opposed to The Witness. To me, like The Witness, I just didn't jive with whatsoever. And I know like there's people that love The Witness that had like notebooks dedicated to it. There's another game as well. What's that one? It's like you're a little sprite guy, and you've basically got to decipher a language. Fez is another one. I just didn't. It's just like, I think this is personal taste. That's another one that didn't quite get me, but this one really, really got me until it didn't.
I'm glad. I'm really glad about that. I'm glad we both stuck with it and got to the end.
Super glad.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Strap yourselves in, everybody. I'm going to go through the story as it happens, and I'm going to tell you what you should have seen to lead up to either figuring out the characters or figuring out how they died. Whatever I've done.
So
shitloads of research on this.
I keep doing this, but the interesting and valuable thing about this, if you haven't played this game, is that I'm assuming you're telling this in order.
Yes.
Whereas the way that the game's constructed, until you've got all, and even when you've got all the sort of stories and scenes put together, it's very difficult to actually watch the game or the story unfold in order, and you've got to piece that together.
It almost always starts at the very end,
especially
the very last chapter of the story.
The
game literally starts at the end.
Especially the bit, because there's bits where you can, once you've unlocked them, you can actually watch them in order. But that boat bit where they go off the boat bit, so it's a whole game about boats. But the bit where they go off in their own boats, that can't be watched in order. So, or at least I couldn't figure out.
No, you're right. No, you can't, because you have to get the corpses of certain people from
the ship, which starts at the end, and you've basically got to watch it in reverse and then figure it out yourself.
The pocket watch it doesn't ever tell you this, does it? It's just all of a sudden it starts shaking, and he goes and puts it on a corpse within the memory of the one you're already looking at, and then it does this weird trail of like
walk around and follow it.
Yeah, which was sometimes really annoying, because it had been like right next to the one you're at.
And you go away and come back.
Like, come on.
And I did say that, because I was like, I know you're coming back here, so I would just stand there and the trail would stop.
Like, nope.
You've got to follow me, mate.
Yeah.
This is a video game. You've got to do some gameplay.
Yeah. Crikey. Right. So, in 1802, Captain Robert Witterall plans to sail with a crew of 60 on the Obra Dinn from London. He's actually going to the Orient, to Formosa, which is modern-day Taiwan.
Oh, okay.
Which is a country.
Yeah. Despite, was it the Chinese that say
it's
not? We've
so he
just
wants
been
to go there
in China.
Yeah, we're dead now. We're on a list, and we're dead. We're dead men. And he wants to go there by the way of the southern Cape of Africa. And they've got Formosans on board. And they bring with them this chest that's got a shell in it. And they hide that, and they sort of constantly guard it as well. It's behind some
so they
curtains,
brought this,
isn't it?
They brought this shell on board.
Yeah. So the Formosans brought the shell with them from the start.
Oh, I thought so. Sorry, I'm going to keep interrupting you here.
No, I hope you do, because I hope you're going to get loads of stuff twigging
when they were
there.
carrying that, is it the shell they were carrying downstairs, and the guy sort of gets knocked over and falls and hits his head? Is that them bringing it on board, or is that after? Is that a mermaid?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. I missed this shell being brought on board.
Yeah,
The only thing I clocked was, obviously, because it's right in your face, is the chest that opens up and you can see inside space and time or whatever it is.
yeah, that's that. So they bring that on board. But if you go right back to certain points, there'll be a Formosan guard stood in front of a curtain guarding it. So they're guarding it the whole time.
Oh, right, okay.
So what it does is the ship then. So we start off then in this chapter called Loose Cargo. So the ship leaves from London and it stops in Falmouth to pick up some supplies. And while loading the supplies, the cargo falls on Seaman Samuel Peters, and it kills him as well as this unknown stowaway who's inside the barrel. And this is what I was alluding to earlier, where one of the clues I found was that bunks are taken down when people die. So if you were to look for a man named Peters, or look for a bunk belonging to one of the two Peters brothers, only one of them has a bunk for the entire game. Samuels is never there.
Peters is the guy. I thought Peters got killed by a sea monster.
There's two of them, remember? So there's Nathan Peters and Samuel Peters.
Jumping about, there's one of the guys that says, please tell, is it Peters' mum that I tried to pull him back?
That's his first name is Peter. Yeah, this is
right.
Peters.
This is a different person. I was going to say because if that's right, I have stumbled across because I spent a long time trying to find that guy trying to pull someone back.
Yeah, that's the guy who's been stabbed. Get the wiki up, because then you can type these names in and it might help you kind of remember who I'm talking about. I think that will help you out. So yeah, that's basically all there is in that first one in Loose Cargo. The second part of the story, the second chapter, is called A Bitter Cold. So as the ship sails south past Madeira, which is in Portugal, a bitter cold causes a fatal illness to seamen Solomon Said and Renfred Rajub. Now, we can tell who they are because of their bunk numbers, and because all the Indian crewmates are all in the same sort of block of them.
Did you ever find yourself, because this is probably the first time I did it, did you find yourself sort of second guessing yourself? Because you were like when he was, I think in this bit he's like, Said, get up. And I was like, oh, well, it must be the guy in the bunk. But then I was like, I was definitely overthinking it. I was like, but he could also be calling someone else to get up because someone's hurt. So I was like, is that him?
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know.
Yeah, because you can see, and that's another one of the bunk beds where you can get the name, because you can get the name of the guy who is standing over the corpse, because his is the only bunk that's empty.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
There's 4 of them there. There's obviously one guy dying in a bunk. There's a man standing over the top of him. There's another guy at the back, and then there's an empty one, which is obviously where he's come from. There's a scene as well where there's a cow being slaughtered.
Yeah.
We can get the butcher from that because he's got a pretty thick Irish accent. We can also get Charles Hirschstick because he is throwing up on his shoes, and you can hear a man say, "Never been on a farm, Charlie."
Yeah.
So you can figure out that's
yeah,
Charles.
Let's go find a Charles on the manifest.
Exactly. We can also get the surgeon in this scene because he's basically presiding over one of the dying men in his bunk.
I got the surgeon after the guy had died. So he was dead, and the guy was dying in the bed, and then there was the sort of corpse in the bag outside. That's where I got the surgeon.
That's
in
this
just sort
part,
of pieced it together, because I could piece together that room. I was like, well, the guy in the chair must be the surgeon's assistant.
Exactly.
Even though he's doing absolutely nothing to help.
No, I think the guy in the seat was the surgeon, and then his assistant's stood at the back. He's just kind of stood there with his arms crossed, because the surgeon's
maybe talking
reclining.
Maybe we're talking. I think we're talking around the same thing. So the surgeon sitting in the seat was beside the bed.
Yes.
And then the assistant was reclining.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, you are right. Yeah, he's actually with the surgeon pretty much the whole time. There's another part where when they're dragging, after the bit you were talking about earlier with the rowboat, when they're all dragging them back on, the surgeon's somewhere else, and his surgeon's mate is there next to his surgeon's kit, dealing with all the other people.
The bit when I was looking for the surgeon's sort of helper, assistant, that threw me off is you stumble across the bit where the guy's had his leg chopped off.
Yes.
And he's like, "Oh, you've been my assistant." The surgeon's like, "Oh, you've been my assistant
got me for ages."
Yeah, because I assumed that the surgeon's assistant was the guy that had chopped the leg off. It wasn't until this is one thing I had to Google. So there's a bit where a guy says something in another language, and I had to Google
Yep.
the language. I was like, and it was Swedish. I was like, well,
Yep.
there's one Swedish guy on this boat, so
And then you realise it's actually the captain who was saying about, "Oh, you've been my
Yeah.
steward for so long," and yeah. There's another thing
that
as well.
threw me right off.
During the Doom, which is where they get attacked by a kraken later on, the surgeon's mate is in the bed in the surgery making the bed.
Oh, is he? Okay.
I can't remember whereabouts that is, but there's some point there where the surgeon's obviously off doing something, but his mate is still in the surgery making the bed up. So you've got all these clues that he is who he is.
The sort of assistant rather than the boss.
That's it. There's also a numbered bunk in this scene, and it's got a pipe next to it, which helps you figure out somebody later on, because somebody is later on smoking that pipe.
There was a bit.
There's also a sword in there that only belongs to one guy, and it's a certain type of sword, and there's only one person from that nationality. But again, that's like outside.
Did you ever get hung up on stuff? So when I realised that you could piece together environmental clues,
yeah,
I was in one of the cabins and there was a pipe hanging on the wall, and I just became fixated on this pipe, looking for this pipe and this person that had this pipe, because I was like, well, it's you. Never found it. Never did.
Well, that was how I had with the guy with the lady tattoo on his arm. Just every scene I'm staring at forearms, trying to find a guy that's got a tattoo of a lady, and it's like right near the end until I got it. It was doing my head in. Right. The third chapter is called Murder. So when they get further south into the Canary Islands, second mate Edward Nichols starts plotting to steal this Formosan chest that they've got on board of him. You can actually see one of the scenes that his steward is actually whispering in his ear.
Oh, right, okay.
So he breaks into the cargo hold and he knocks out the guard, whose name is Hock Seng Lao. And then he opens the chest. But he's interrupted by Nunzio Pasqua, who says something like, "Oh, Senor Nichols," in an Italian accent. So you can kind of figure out that that's the dude who's been killed.
I still couldn't figure out why he killed him, though.
It's because so Edward Nichols is trying to steal the shell. He's knocked out the guard. He's trying to steal it. Nunzio Pasqua catches him, so he just kills him because he's obviously stumbled upon his plot. Then
Just
so
seems
then
like a
what
massive
happens?
overreaction.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what he expect. Maybe he was going to get done for. I don't know what he was going to get done for, but obviously he wanted to avoid whatever that was.
Yeah.
Hock Seng Lao is then found guilty for the murder of Nunzio, which we obviously hear because the captain sentences that way. But he's found guilty of murder by confession.
So does he get convicted of the murder of the Italian?
Yeah. And it's apparently one of the top men, the Chinese top men. He is translating, and he basically, it's assumed that he mistranslates a confession. He tells the captain Hock Seng Lao has confessed to this murder, even though obviously he never actually does confess because he didn't do it. So he then gets gunned down by a firing squad. You can hear somebody trying to console Miss Lim as well at this point, which kind of lets you identify, because obviously
says something like
the
it's
Taiwanese
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, there's Taiwanese names or Formosan names at the time, but I think it's not unreasonable to assume that none of us are going to be able to really figure out which of those was a female name and which ones weren't. So when they say Miss Lim, it kind of helps you figure that out. You also hear him say Mr. Wolf when you're ready, which allows you to kind of figure out who the gunner is if you can see him he sort of points, doesn't he, when he says to fire. And it took me ages to figure out that all the guys shooting this dude missed except for one.
So I was really proud of myself.
Firing squad killed him. So
because I was looking, I was like, oh, all the bullets go by except the one, and then you figure out who he is, and actually he was a bit of a troublemaker.
He was. That was Brennan. I think he's just a seaman. Henry Brennan, I think his name is. The next chapter is called The Calling. So Nichols is still thirsty as fuck for this chest.
I didn't actually click that Nichols did this so early on. I actually thought in my head I had pieced this together, obviously wrongly, because I'm sure the book tells you this, but like I had pieced it together that he did that at the end, and when things started, like, so there's a bit later on without jumping ahead, where they leave on a rowing boat. I thought that was
that's now.
Right, okay, because I thought they were like, right, they're off in the rowing boat with some sort of precious cargo that they think they've stolen.
Mm.
That was when I had it together. I just didn't have the timeline in the right order, I think.
Yeah, so he's already had a go at it once, but he got caught by the Italian guy, kills him, but he still wants it. So this time he plots to steal it again. So he actually gets like a little group of people this time. Some scurvy bastards who help him steal. They steal the chest, and then they kidnap Bunlan Lim, which is the lady, Formosan, and Itbeng Sia. And then they all get in a lifeboat and they head off to the Canary Islands because you hear them talking about it, that they're trying to outrun the Obra Dinn. And this is the dude, actually, the top man called Timothy. His name is like a Butamant. He's the one who has the arm tattoo.
Right, okay.
This is so you see him. He tries to stop them from getting away, but Nichols shoots him. He's like, you see him kind of stood on top and he's trying to get him. And Nichols has got like Bunlan Liam, he's got that lady Formosan as a hostage, and he shoots Timothy Butamant. And you can also find as well on the lifeboat, Alexei Toporov, one of the Russian guys, is smoking that pipe we found in the bunk in the one where everybody's getting ill. That's when the pipe shows up again. While they're out on the open sea, the lifeboats get attacked by mermaids. So one of the top men, whatever, called Lee Hong, he gets speared through the chest. Seaman Patrick O'Hagan is speared through the neck.
The shell? Like, what attracts them?
Yes, yeah. The mermaids are trying to get the shell back.
Right, okay.
You actually hear somebody say to Patrick O'Hagan, "Are you still breathing?" So you can kind of get him from that. You can use like the clothing to figure out that he is a seaman rather than any of the other people there, because you've got top men and Formosans and whatever. Two of the Russian guys, Alarkus Nishkin and Alexei Toporov, they get dragged underwater. Bunlan Lim, the female Formosan, she gets clawed in the throat.
Yeah, that's a bit rough.
Yeah, she actually calls out to Itbeng Sia at that point to help her, and that's how you're able to identify him, because he's obviously the other Formosan on board. He's the one who's also tied up because they've obviously both been kidnapped, the two Formosans. So he actually uses the spear that's sticking out of Lee Hong to like cut his own rope. So Nichols kidnaps them.
Why?
And because he wants them as hostages when he takes the shell away in the chest.
Right, okay.
I don't know why he decides to kidnap them. Maybe they were guarding it at the time. I don't know. But he gets a bunch of lads together. They kidnap those two and take the shell with them, and they fuck off, basically. Okay. Nichols is everything is his fault. We can already tell from this early stage, because the only deaths so far really have been cargo falling on somebody's head and everyone getting sick. So everything else now is Nichols' fault. He ruined everything.
Yeah, he did. He made a mess.
Yeah. So Itbeng Sia, there's a spear sticking out of Lee Hong. He uses that to cut his ropes off, stabs Nichols' mate, Samuel Galligan, and then he goes to the Formosan chest. He grabs the shell out of the little drawer it's in, and he puts it in the top, in this little tray at the top. And that makes these massive, like, pillars of fire.
I just like smashed his hand into it for some reason. I never clicked about the shell. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So that obviously is what happens to the shell for some reason. It knocks all the mermaids out, but also burns his arm off and kills him. Then, for some reason, Nichols decides to pull all the mermaids onto the boats. And you can actually see that each of the mermaids also has a shell in their possession. So every single one he brings on board, they've all got a little shiny shell that's like flickering there. He then heads back to the Obra Dinn with all of it. But when he returns, Chio Tan is the only Formosan left alive, and he's obviously really fucked off with Nichols for necking all of his mates and the chest. So he just shoots him out of a window, or from a window.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, you can also see John Davies, who's looking out of the fourth mate's window, which identifies him at this point as well.
How does it identify him? Do you know?
So he's looking out of a window, and if you look at the map of where he is, it's the fourth mate's cabin.
Right, okay.
So yeah, you can kind of tell that that's who he is, because where he is based on the map. We then move on to the next chapter, which is Unholy Captive. So this is when the crew start pulling on board the bodies of the mermaids and all the dead crew, as well as the chest. Chio Tan, the guy who's just shot Nichols from the window, he's then hauled in front of the captain, and he's asked about what the mermaids are. And this is where the top man Huang Li is interpreting. So this is the guy who they think is the one who set up the confession earlier, who lied and said, "Oh yeah, he's saying he did it." So Chio Tan says that the shell must be protected, or they're all going to die. And this is the part where, in this chapter, if you were to walk around the ship at certain times, you'll see all of the midshipmen together, all of the gunners are together, the surgeons are together, and the boatswains are together. They're all hanging out together at some point in this chapter. So, in this interrogation scene where the captain stood there, one of the mermaids then shoots the spikes out. That kills Tan, and there's a guy holding him called Hamadou Diom, who was from... I can't remember where's he from?
Hamadou Diom?
Yeah, Hamadou. Because there was a... I don't know if it's meant to be done on purpose, but did you ever feel slightly racist in this game for trying to match black dudes to black-sounding names?
I did, but I actually find it quite difficult.
Yeah, it was very difficult. And I think that's meant to be done on purpose.
Yeah. Hamadou Diom is a seaman from Sierra Leone. He was
Sierra
by a
Leone,
mermaid in Chapter 5, Part 1.
Yeah, so I couldn't even tell you where Sierra Leone is. Is it in Africa?
There's something in our history about Sierra Leone. I'm pretty sure there was a... I'm pretty sure is that Slobodan Milosevic? Did Tony Blair not get involved in that?
I don't know.
There was quite a mass genocide in that country, I think.
Oh, okay. Maybe that rings. Yeah,
it's
ringing a bell.
See where Sierra Leone is.
Yeah, but
it's in West Africa.
Yeah, so there's as far as I know, there is no way of identifying Hamadou Diom except for his race, matching an African-sounding name. That's it, and that has to be the way that he's decided he wants you to do it.
Yeah.
So this is the part you were mentioning earlier. So this is where they're carrying the mermaids on stretchers down into the hold, and this is where the cook, Thomas Sefton, starts joking about cooking them up a nice meal from him, which obviously identifies him as the cook. But unfortunately for him, he immediately gets fatally bitch slapped by the tail of that mermaid. And that causes all the lads carrying the stretchers to fall over. And then they drop the stretcher onto William Wassim's neck.
Right, that's right.
It's horrendous. It's like...
Yeah, that's a bad way to go.
Yeah. They then lock the mermaids and the chest in the lazarette. Now, the confusion around this next bit is what you were kind of alluding to earlier. This is where the captain's steward, Philip Dahl, the only Swedish guy, nobody seems to really know why, but he just goes mental and cuts off the leg of Seaman John Naples.
Yeah.
There's not really any explanation.
Yeah, that's true.
He's just really fucked off that they've brought this on, so he decides to cut a dude's leg off.
As you do.
Yeah, so obviously the captain gets really pissed off at him and says, "Oh, you've been my steward for 20 years, never questioned your sanity," or something like that. So they drag him away, and he starts then, as you said, speaking Swedish. All the while, you've got the surgeon, Henry Evans, is dealing with John's leg, and you hear him say, "All's fine, John. I'm sure you've had worse than this." So that kind of helps you figure out who it is whose leg is cut off. What we find out later, obviously, is that Dahl, while locked in the lazarette, does eventually break free. He has a little feel of the shell as well, which also burns his hand off and kills him. So at this point, after this crazy shit going on with his steward, the captain has had more than enough of this shit and decides to turn it back and go back to England. They've had enough. So you can obviously see on the map, they just give the fuck up and start going home. Unfortunately for them, as they're heading back, a storm hits the ship. This is where we start Soldiers of the Sea chapter. This electrocutes and kills one of the top men called Huang Li, the guy who was translating.
I struggled with the top men.
Me too. This is the shoes, right?
Yeah.
We can identify Leonid, one of the Russian top men, because he's the only Russian guy stood up there. It's a top man, so we can get that one. And then so this is where these two hooded crab rider blokes
Yeah, they're a bit odd.
just smash their way on the ship. Nicholas Botterill is a top man as well. He's immediately speared by one of them. I think it's later divulged in the next scene where somebody says it's already done for Nick.
It's done for Nick. Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
Fourth mate John Davies raises the alarm as then everything starts to go below deck. We have the carpenter's mate Marcus Gibbs. He throws an axe at one of the riders and he shouts, "Come on, boss," in an American accent, which helps identify you which is which. And this is where they do like he does a little switch where the carpenter is the black guy and the carpenter's mate is the white guy, which is kind of like surely a twist on that era of time where you'd expect it to be the other way around, because there's a scene
I think I made
earlier.
I think I made that mistake. I was like, well,
me too.
Based on the era, he's probably the
also
the black guy.
Yeah, because also there's a scene where one of them is doing carpentry and another one's looking out the door to some commotion, and they swap it round there as well, so that like the guy doing the sawing is actually the carpenter and the carpenter's mate is the one who walks out the door. But I guess you'd expect it to be the carpenter who looks out the door. Because I got to the point where I should have had
those two right, so I just started jamming it. Like, I'm sure you did this as well.
I brute forced a lot. Yeah,
you think you've got two, so you just start jamming names and stuff in, and it wasn't until I switched them around that I actually had any success.
Yeah, and this is when I started panicking and looking at guides thinking, oh, but if I've got the death type wrong, then I'm going to fuck it up. But when you look at the wiki, a lot of death types...
Yeah,
it's quite forgiving.
Yeah, it gives you a bit of forgiving, because there's one where like they get crushed by the Kraken, but there's also a cannon getting crushed at the same time, so it'll let you pick crushed by cannon or crushed by Kraken.
Yeah, you can get stuff like...
terrible beasts, sorry.
Yeah, you can get stuff like it was crushed by the Kraken or drowned. Like, if it kind of just like... Either it probably killed it, but they also would have drowned. Yeah. Where did we get up to? So yeah, this is where you see that the two carpenter guys are. But the axe that gets thrown at the rider just like bats it aside, and then spikes him through the chest as well. So Marcus Gibbs is gone. And then the other rider decapitates the surgeon's mate James Wallace and top man Ji Zhang with its big claws. So I think there you can have like decapitated or clawed. So yeah, I think either of those type of things will work. So midshipman Charles Hirschstick, he throws a lantern at one of them. It does kill it, but he also burns himself alive whilst doing it. I'm not sure how they pulled that off. I don't know because it sounds like he throws it, but he's obviously stood right there.
It's right there, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're playing Halo just now, and there's plenty of times where I've thrown those exploding cubes right at people's faces that are standing right next to me,
or a fucking like beam that was above your head and you didn't realize was there. The other rider, the non-burning alive rider, spikes the butcher Emilio Farrell to a wall. And then it makes its way to the all-up deck and towards the lazarette, because it's obviously after the chest and the mermaids and all that shit. The boatswain's mate Charles Minor tries to shoot it, or might be Minet as he's French. He misses when he tries to shoot it, and he accidentally shoots Zungi Sati through a wall that he was hiding. Because that's the bit where we're also on that side of the wall, aren't we? We're all like next to him, and you can see it all through the porthole. That's the bit where you can look through and see the purser in his purser's cabin, Duncan Smith.
Yeah, I got that. I remember that bit. Yeah,
or
you can also get the gunner and the gunner's mate there as well. Yeah,
there's a lot of instances of them two just like carrying guns around or handing them out of the door, the little room. And then we find the carpenter Winston Smith. He lures it down to the cargo hold. It clearly stabs him shitloads of times, but he somehow also shotguns it straight in the face. And he manages to kill it because he has that hero's death, doesn't he? And I guess, again, Lucas Pope's trying to give the black carpenter, he's the boss here, really. He's the hero who sacrifices himself, kills the second rider. After this, we move into the Doom, which is where some of the crew now have clearly like lost all the fucks that they had to give and are just trying to get out now. So you've got people trying to attempt to flee on a lifeboat. So you've got the purser, Duncan Mackay, you've got Seaman Alexander Booth, and Nathan Peters are all start to try and board a lifeboat. And then you get Lars Lind asks them to let him on as well. Peters calls him a bloody Dane, which helps you identify who he is.
Yep.
And blames him for his brother's death at the beginning by dropping the cargo on him.
Yeah, I was
So he
a bit
clubs him in the
baffled by
face.
how it was his fault.
Yeah. So he is, yeah, it obviously wasn't his fault, but he's obviously there. You can see him kind of like trying to grab for the rope at the very beginning. In this scene, apparently you can see George Shirley and Wei Lee sitting together. So they're
really?
down below deck. They're sitting opposite each other. And only Wei
I
Lee...
think he was the guy that gave us a pain in my ass.
Yeah, George Shirley really did my head in. And I kind of brute forced it, maybe / looked at a guide because I thought I'd got his shoes. But that's not the way to identify him. So the actual way to do it is, they are sitting opposite each other. And there's only 2 bunks behind them. But Wei Lee's bunk tag is visible, so you can get him from that. But George's bed is all like messed up and on the floor. But if you cross-reference that back to A Bitter Cold, which is chapter 2, you can actually see George's tag in that bunk.
Right, okay.
And go and like cross-reference that to identify him. Because in this scene where he's sat next to the bed is messed up. But if you go find that bed earlier, it will have the tag and you'll get his name from that, which is just fucking crazy. Too clever for me. And then, unfortunately for the people trying to escape and everybody else, the mermaids have summoned a kraken, which first of all strangles the artist Edward Spratt against the bow of the ship.
Having a jobby, yeah.
Yeah, while he's going for a schwitz. The next casualty is Seaman Abraham Akbar. He gets crushed between the cannon he's lighting and the wall because the kraken like pulls it towards him.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it also pulls gunner Christian Wolfe onto the muzzle of the lit cannon as it's going off. That's when George Shirley dies as well. Now, George Shirley tries to pull him away from the cannon, but obviously fails, and the cannon shoots both of them. But George Shirley gets shot so much, he fucking disappears off the face of the earth. He's long gone.
God. Okay. You don't want to get shot by a cannon, did you? Do you?
Especially if you're stuck, because he's quite literally stuck on the end of it as it's going off. And the Kraken's just holding him there on purpose, just not letting him get away. Absolute brutality. That's the most affecting death, I think, for me. It just imagine that.
It was those cannon ones that, like, I don't know why. I think I alluded to it when you spoke to it. Like, they were just they so affected me. And there was one where there was like a storm down below deck, and then someone shouting "loose cannon," and you go down.
That's the guy who died a minute ago. Yeah.
Oh, and he's just been getting crushed by the
his head's just
rocking
like
about.
Yeah.
Oh,
because you were talking to me, weren't you? Like the phrase "loose cannon."
Yeah, I'm like, I was watching. I was like, okay, yeah, loose cannons were no joke. They would like sink a ship potentially.
Yeah. Because there's another guy who gets crushed. This is the guy actually. So this explosion dislodges another cannon, and then third mate Roderick Anderson. He's the one who gets like crushed into head first in a wall.
God.
Then we have the 2 midshipmen, Thomas Lank and Peter Milroy, which is what you were talking about earlier, where they head up to the main deck with what I was led to believe was sort of cartridge bags or something. Peter gets grabbed by a tentacle and the bag blows up, and he's just this big ball of explosion in the air. We also see in this part top man Omid Gul and helmsman Finley Dalton. They both just get chucked into the sea by the Kraken. It really fucked me off that the helmsman Finley Dalton in the picture is standing holding the wheel, and I never got him till so late on. But he's in the very first picture.
I saw there was only one helmsman. I went specifically looking for someone holding the wheel.
Yeah, and he's there in that picture you can look at from right at the beginning. Top man Mabba, who was doing mine and your head in because we both thought he was the bosun's mate because he gets torn in half, because they say that the bosun's mate's torn in half. But apparently we're supposed to recognize him because he's got Western Pacific tattoos. And he's from New Guinea, which I didn't even know was in the Western Pacific, or what their tattoos look like.
No, I didn't.
But that's how you're supposed to know who he is. But we then do later hear that the same fate happened to the bosun's mate Charles Minor, or Minet, whatever it is. Apparently, a clue for him is that he's supposedly wearing clothing that's based on French Navy uniforms from the 1800s. The sort of stripy blue shirt, like the what's the perfume? Jean-Paul Gaultier, is it? Oh, you've gone muted.
Am I unmuted now? Yeah,
Yes.
I'm back. Yeah, I muted it to cough and then forgot to unmute
Ah,
it. Yeah, now you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, of course, but
yeah.
because I was looking at that guy for ages trying to figure him out. I think he's the
Yeah.
one that you would like if when you were like following him around, you would see him like he would be like,
He's
randomly
everywhere.
standing next to a pig. He'd just be standing next to a hole, like when they were like he would just be standing around doing nothing all the time. Like, how am I meant to know who this guy is?
Yeah, he's
And he's wearing
very
a
he's
French
very
bloody
seldom
uniform.
next to the bosun. Is another thing as well.
He got brute
Other
force.
than that bit where I was talking about earlier, where they're all stood together.
Yeah.
Yeah, Whaley gets pulled off some rigging that he's climbing up. And of this point as well, the lifeboat, you can see in the distance, can't you? The lifeboat's just been tipped upside down
Yeah.
by the Kraken, and they're all falling into the sea. That's Duncan Mackay, Alexander Booth, Nathan Peters. They're all gone. The bosun, Alfred Klestel, he gets his arm ripped off. You can see at one point the Kraken's got his tentacles around his arm, and it's sort of like pulling against him. We also see the captain's wife, Abigail Hoscott Witterall. She gets crushed by some rigging.
Yeah.
She's calling out for her husband at that point, so you've already got her by that point anyway. But apparently, in this scene, if you look in like towards the captain's sort of cabin, you can see the two other women. They're both cowering in the corner, and one of them's got a wedding ring on, which is Emily Jackson, because the other one is labelled as Miss Jane Bird. So you know that the one with the wedding ring is not Miss. I didn't see that.
I brute forced that.
I only saw this in a video that I watched. I did not see those two women in this scene at all.
No.
But they're basically like, if Abigail's kind of getting crushed by the rigging here, they're sort of a little bit away behind her, both sort of like cowering, looking at her like that. Mental. So the next chapter is called Bargain, and you don't get this till you've done everything else and you get right towards the end of the game. But this happens next chronologically. So after all of this stuff's happened, the captain's just been attacked by a Kraken. His wife's just got crushed. That leads him to then just bust into the lazarette, demand that the mermaids call off the Kraken. Clearly, he knows that they brought it there. He shoots one of them, and then he stabs the other one before the last one finally calls it off. Then the third mate, Martin Perrott, he comes into the lazarette to try and free the mermaid, but it's spooked or scared or whatever, and it shoots him with spikes instead. So that was a nice way for him to go. He tried to be a nice guy, but nice guys finish last, or in this case, I don't know, 60th. His steward, Davy James, and the first mate steward, Paul Moss, try and calm the mermaid by giving it a shell. Then they carry the mermaid away. With his dying breath, the third mate, Perrott, the one who just got spiked by it, he asks her to safely see the Obra Dinn back home. He says, see it home, or whatever it is. Then Moss and James, the two guys who just carried her out, they just dump her overboard with the shells just to get them off, free her. Surgeon Henry Evans, apparently then later, I'm assuming I asked you this question, does he cut the monkey's paw off and then throw it in the lazarette and kill it?
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out.
Because the door's locked, so you're not going to be getting
the monkey in the face for what I could. I was like, well, that was uncalled for.
Yeah. So he does that. So that obviously later on we can use the time watch on the monkey's paw to then actually get inside the lazarette because it's locked. And they mention something about the keys gone.
Oh, right. So the monkey must come along, put his hand through. He's like, let me out, mate. Chop it off, keep the paw, shoot him in the face, and then you can sort of see the...
Well, I think he does it on purpose because they ask him what he's doing and he says nothing good. So I've got it in my head that he cuts the monkey's paw off to keep hold of a part of it, throws it in and just blows it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he can throw it through the window, yeah.
Because they say, because when you're sitting in your study towards the end of the game, they send the monkey's paw. So he's got the monkey's paw so that you can see that.
Exactly.
Scene.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch.
Because you can't get in there with those, can you? Because it's locked the whole time.
No, you should have taken the monkey. Absolute son of a bitch.
Dick. Yeah, so Alfred Klestel, the bosun, he gets taken below deck at this point. He's got no armor now because it's been ripped off by the Kraken. He eventually does succumb to blood loss. This is where he asks where his Frenchman is. And of course, there's only one on board. This is where you and I thought that the other guy was the Frenchman.
Yeah.
But obviously, we can identify him at least as the bosun because we can tell that the bosun's mate is French. So this guy must be the bosun. But he also does cast aspersions to fourth mate John Davies and gunner's mate Ollis Winter about Captain Witcherall and how he managed to get the Kraken and the Storm to go away. He says, you're not going to get rid of a curse that easily just by, just kind of going. Because they say something, I don't know, he just left with the Storm. And he's like, yeah, right, okay, lads, whatever. After that, in the next part, which is Escape, Henry Evans, along with passengers Emily Jackson and Jane Bird, fourth mate steward Davy James, and first mate steward Paul Moss, they all try and escape on a lifeboat. Leonid Volkov spots them, and he kills Paul Moss with a sword. You can tell because Emily Jackson says, "Look out, Paul," or whatever it is, so you can tell who that guy is. The captain at this point actually is the one who's saying, "Let them go, just whatever, mate, just give up, just let them go." Volkov himself, after killing Moss, then tries to get on the boat, but Emily Jackson shoots him, so that's the end of him. And then the remaining four, they all manage to actually escape. Yeah. And it pissed me off because I didn't know where they'd gone, but it's right at the first page of the book that they're in Morocco because the person who wrote the book in the first place is Henry Evans, which I could not believe was the very first page.
It must just that's another example of the game letting you off of being vague, because I think I just said Africa and it let me have it.
Well, it doesn't say Morocco, yeah, so you have to say Africa.
Right,
that's
okay.
right. And I think potentially you could brute force that quite quickly if you just went one at a time alphabetically, because there's only like one above Africa, so you could probably get there in the end. Below the deck, so Olus, Wyatter, and John Davies, the ones who were just with the bosun, who's the one who's just said, "Oh yeah, all right, yeah, the fucking Kraken left did it." They then decide to mutiny by taking the ship, sailing east, and they want to sell the mermaids in the shells. Obviously, they don't realize that they're not even on board anyway. Thomas Lank overhears them and then shouts about mutiny. This is where Olus Wyatter gives chase and he stabs him, which I couldn't find for ages because this is one of the ones you were talking about where the guy's crawling off with the knife in his back.
Yeah.
I just could not figure out who did him in.
It's the same guy that shot the guy on the top deck.
Yeah. Yeah. So then John Davies, who was he was in on the mutiny with Olus Wyatter a second ago, but having seen him stab somebody, decides that he's gone too far, tries to take Wyatter's gun from him, which then goes off in Wyatter's face, which is another incredibly brutal death because it's like point blank straight up the chin. Then first mate William Hoskett and seaman Henry Brennan hear the noise. They come down to the below deck to see what the hell's going on. Henry Hoskett goes after Lank, the one who's crawled into the cabin and starts bleeding. So he goes into the midshipman's cabin as well. That's when you can tell who the midshipmen are and what they wear. He also says he tried. This is the bit where you were talking about where he says, "I tried to save Peter."
That's right.
He tried to pull him in. So we know that then, again, they're midshipmen and we can figure out who those two are. Hoskett shouts to Brennan by name. He says Brennan being the surgeon's kit. And you can, if you scroll out and go into the main deck, you can see Brennan putting his hand to his ear to try and listen out for that. Brennan obviously clubs Davies to death because he thinks that he's just shot Wyatter on purpose. He calls him a bloody fool or something, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like, what's all this, you bloody fool? He fucking twats him. At that stage, then there are only 4 people left. And we get to the end, and this is where Captain Witcherall has now gone and locked himself in his cabin. William Hoskett and Henry Brennan try to kick it down. Again, they want to get in and get the shells off of him, despite the fact that, again, they're not there. So Witcherall, he opens the door and he says something like, "Oh, you can have whatever you bastards can have whatever I want to give you," or something, and he shoots Hoskett in the neck. This is
when you go around the back and you can see the guy jumping over the side.
Yeah, this is like the very start of the game that we're actually playing now. Because that guy's like scooting around the back of the captain's cabin while the people are trying to kick the door down. So Brennan then busts in the door, demands to know where the shells are. The captain tells him they're at the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
They have a fight. Brennan just slices his neck with a knife. And then this top man, Lewis Walker, the last remaining man alive, tries to get the captain by surprise by stabbing him in the chest, or the side rather. But the captain does this like wicked cool, like spinneroonie club to the face. And then, dejected at having just killed his wife's brother, he goes through his wife's bedside, shoots himself, and says the name Abigail to her. Apologizes that he shot her brother. That gives you quite a few people at the beginning, because she's got obviously Hosker in her double-barrel surname. And that's how they all die. And then, as we've already said, 5 years later, it drifts back to Falmouth. Interesting thing here is that, did you ever notice the little shining thing in the distance off the side of the ship?
I did, yeah. I assumed that was just mermaids farting about.
Yeah, that's the mermaid who helped see it home with her shell.
Ah, right, okay.
So yeah, as you said, we're an East India Company insurance inspector. We're summoned to determine what happened, given this catalogue and the pocket watch, which was mailed to us by Henry Evans from Morocco, where he tells you that he escaped to. So we complete the investigation. They leave the inspector, that is us. We leave the ship as the weather's about to get worse. There's a storm coming in. After we leave, the Obra Dinn sinks in that storm. That's when we do the full insurance assessment, send the book back to Henry Evans. Then a year later, Henry Evans dies in Africa due to illness. And Jane Bird, the other one of the surviving passengers, she sends the letter telling him that Evans has died, how he felt about the performance. Apparently, you get a different type of letter depending on how many of them you got at this point. You get a chance then, obviously, to find out what happened in the lazarette during the bargain stage because of the monkey's paw. And then if you've done everything correctly, the inspector will close his little book and stick it back on his shelf and pat himself on the back for a job well done.
Some game, eh?
Some shit happens in that game.
Yeah. I was writing down, I wrote down 3 things. I was like, I'm just going to write down things that jump to mind as Alex is speaking. We covered fuck the striped shirt guy, because that's obviously the Frenchman.
Yeah, because he was everywhere, and because in the drawing, he's like stood near the Formosan women. He's like right near them.
Seems to be randomly hovering about.
He was just never hanging out and doing his actual fucking job.
So, what were they doing with the shell in the first place? Why was it being taken on the boat? Do you know?
Now that I don't know. I've never actually managed to find out why the Formosans have this treasure. Well, they're going. The journey of the ship is to go to Formosa.
Oh, right.
That's where they're supposed to be going from London.
So, which made me wonder, which is the second thing. Does that mean, like, potentially Miss Lynn is a mermaid? Where did the shell come from?
Well, why would the mermaid kill her, though?
Because she's sort of been a traitor.
Yeah, maybe. The little mermaid. She's got some legs, yeah.
And the other one I thought about it while you were chatting is the music in this game is awesome. I really, really like the music in this game.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because, I forgot to mention that earlier, but I love the music. It's so cool. I could just, because the amount of times I would just kind of sit there with the title screen on as well, and I was trying to write these notes out or try and figure out what the hell's going on before I start getting back in the game again. Or because my fucking controller was doing all that shit in Steam again.
What's your overall takeaway from this game? Is, I guess, largely positive, right?
Yeah. It's the type of game that I'm really disappointed I can never play again for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it is the kind of game you can only really play once, which I suppose is the... I don't know. I mean, like, there's a place in the market for that, but it's a shame in respect to the fact that you're like, oh, this game was fantastic. I'll never really experience this again, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, whatever this guy comes up with next should be, we should be waiting with bated breath for what this guy does next, because he's got some serious chops. He knows.
I'm willing to commit to that right now. Next time he brings out a game, we'll be doing it on the podcast. Like,
oh yeah, let's hang on. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at Lucas Pope and see if he's got anything coming up. Oh, he lives in Japan. Okay.
Oh, does he?
Both of his games have won the Seamus McNally Grand Prize, whatever that is.
Whatever that is.
Pope states he still plans to develop games but wants to keep these at a small size. Obra Dinn was meant to be a small scale game but ballooned out larger than he anticipated, and he wants his next game to stay small in scope. Doesn't seem to suggest he's got anything here on the go.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Look, see what his Twitter says. Let's see if we can have a quick scan.
He used to work for Naughty Dog.
Is that where he came from? I knew he had done something we would know.
Yeah. He got a job with Naughty. He was a programmer for Naughty Dog. Worked on Uncharted, Drake's Fortune, and Uncharted 2. And
yeah, so I knew he had done more than just
Uncharted 3.
Just bloody Papers, Please. I just couldn't find it off the bat.
Yeah. Looks like he then started trying to make some games for himself. But it wasn't until he did, Papers, Please in 2013. That got a BAFTA. I don't know if this one got a BAFTA. But it's an outstanding piece of work.
Yeah,
like for one guy to have done that.
Yeah.
And the attention to detail that it can go over the head of the player and it can be unappreciated by the player, or it can serve to even confuse the player because there is just so much detail in every scene that we don't notice. But the fact that he's managed to put all this in and tie it all together in a way that tells a story backwards and in parts that get interspersed with all the other stories that are also being told backwards is so clever. And he's got he had people to help him translate old Formosan language, and obviously he got all these voice actors from these countries to do the voices and all the dialogue. As you said, the music is fantastic. It's just it's an incredible piece of work. It's just doesn't necessarily mean that it's entirely the most fun thing we've ever covered for this podcast, but I can sit and appreciate it now and be like, what a fucking achievement this is.
Absolutely. It's a really special game, and like you say, I need to go and play Papers, Please, and I can't wait to see what he does next, basically.
Yeah. Have you got any final thoughts?
I guess I always like to bring up, what do you think you would give it on the old school winners use scale? To me, it's an 8.5, I think. Yeah,
exactly what I was about to say. Yeah, 8.5.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really special game, but there are things that are quite frustrating about it that held it back for me. But then also, would you want? I don't know. Do you want it to be easier? Do you want it to give you an easier time? Probably not.
I think the one thing that we both agreed on was that we would rather be able to go back to memories just from the book, rather than having to walk up to the corpse and find them again.
It did become a bit of a chore by the end of the game, thinking, I need to go all the way down to the bottom of the ship to find this memory, rather than just be able to pick it and go.
Yeah, and it's important as well for stuff like this to, even though we're appreciating how clever it is, but it shouldn't be exempt from criticism, because it sometimes feels like if you criticize a game, I always felt this way with The Witness, that if I'm criticizing The Witness, it's because I just couldn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like the puzzles just became too hard, and
people are sitting twiddling their moustaches. Oh, you just don't get it. You don't understand it.
Exactly. Oh, it's too hard for you. It's brilliant though, isn't it? Well, no, I just didn't enjoy it. It was boring.
Yeah.
They had none of the personality of this. It was just nice to look at and mysterious, whereas this is a proper mystery game with actual intrigue and a plot and all that kind of stuff.
Totally agree. Which I suppose brings us to the end of this episode, right?
Unless you've got anything else you want to talk about.
I do not.
Yeah.
Do a bit of housekeeping, I suppose. Head over to goobastomp.com to check out the post for this podcast, as well as, I actually need to tell them, but I've submitted the review for Battlefield 2042. Peek
How did
Behind
it
the
go in
Curtain
the
is
end?
not a good game.
No.
And
Avoid.
Alex, you got any Sega Mania updates? You up to anything else on websites?
Well, if anybody here is listening to the podcast and is actually a subscriber or has purchased in issue 3 of Sega Mania, I guess I should apologise on behalf of the editor that you probably haven't got it yet.
It's not his fault, to be fair. I mean, it's deeply frustrating, but it's not his fault. He's just been let down by the sounds of it. Yeah,
so, I mean, luckily they have sort of identified and located the issues that have not been delivered yet, but the talk on Discord today was, they were saying if we don't find these, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of pounds of stuff that's been lost, and the magazine's going to be done. They couldn't financially recover from that kind of thing. So luckily they found them, and the magazine will hopefully carry on, because I've only written like one or two things so far. I've written loads of stuff.
That's why I've been deeply frustrated. Is the one issue I actually want to get is the one that's not appeared on my doorstep.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a shocking turn of events from Whistle.
But it sounds like we're going to get there, which is good.
Yeah, just maybe not till after Christmas because of all the post and all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's everything for me. Next up, we're going to have. I think we've decided it's going to be Max Payne, because we have a real not real anniversary approaching, or have we missed it?
It's another one of my classic anniversary blunders.
Classic of winners you isms, in that we think we have an anniversary. Turns out absolutely not.
I can't remember what website I looked at to get these dates, but I'm never looking at it again. I'm just going for 2022. I just went into Wikipedia and did it that way, and just found like proper dates, like specific, not like one of these ones where it's like, here's all the games having an anniversary this year, because we ended up doing, what did I say we ended up doing? The US Xbox port of Max Payne. We've managed to. It was what I'd got for the date of what I thought was 20 years of Max Payne. But
there's no other release important about this game.
It's the version I played, so
it's the best version. Right. I think by 2021 standards, it's the best version. I played through the PlayStation version, and yours was definitely superior to mine.
Well, yeah, I don't know if the PC version's good. It probably is, but
it's always better, I guess, with these retro games, because you can just sort of brute force save states into these things, can't you?
Which is what I did with the quick saves, yeah. But yeah, we've missed that already anyway, because that was the 12th of December, so we fucked the whole thing.
Fuck it. We've got it coming next. If you're listening to this podcast, you can also watch us on YouTube if you want to see my croaky voice in person. And
David has manned up and done this podcast off the back of a flu that he briefly thought was COVID. So
yeah, if you want
to David,
if you
want to, I could talk to save your voice some effort.
exactly. You've saved me. If you want to send us an email, and we'll answer your email on the podcast, you can send it to winnersyouPodcast@gmail.com. Our YouTube channel is A Winners You Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at DavidSmiley1, SMILLIE, or you can follow Alex at SuperThrillix, SuperThrillex, or you can just go straight to the source and follow the A Winners You Pod on Twitter, which is at A Winner Is You Pod. Also, thank you to goombastomp.com for hosting us and putting us on your website. We very much appreciate it. And I guess that brings us to the end of episode 28. So, with all that in the bag, I have been David, he has been Alex, we have been A Winner Is You, and I'm out.
Good game.